Welcome, everybody. This is a public meeting of the Community Foundation of Randolph County Advisory Review Panel convened to review the FY22 Indiana Arts Commission Arts Organizations Support Grant Program applications for Region 5. I am Paige Sharp, and I'm the Deputy Director of Programs for the Indiana Arts Commission. And today is April 22nd, 2021, and we are meeting online and streaming live for applicants and the public to observe. There is no contact between the panel and the audience about the disposition of the applicants before, during, or after the panel meeting. This meeting will be recorded and made available upon request. At this time, I will individually invite each of the panelists and then staff to introduce themselves. Panelists will state their name, occupation, and where they are from in the state. And then staff will just merely state their title and role. Let's start with the panel. And I will start by introducing each of you by your first name so that you can share about yourself. And we'll start with Cassie.
Good morning, I'm Cassie Stockamp. I am using the moniker of retired. I am, or was past president of the Athenaeum Foundation, that old historic building downtown, and had my fingers in a lot of different arts organizations through the building utilization and sat on quite a few boards from a social justice as well as an arts perspective. So I'm glad to be here. Thanks for including me.
Great, thank you so much, Cassie. Eric?
I think Eric's earphones died. He said he was getting another pair, so.
Oh, okay. We'll give him a little break then. Lydia?
Hi, I'm Lydia Spots. I live and work in Indianapolis, but I grew up in Muncie. I am the Associate Archivist and Librarian at the Indianapolis Museum of Art at Newfield. I am also an adjunct lecturer for the School of Informatics here in Indianapolis.
Great, thank you. Leanne?
Hi, I'm Leanne Price. I live in the very tip of Southeast Indiana near Cincinnati. I am a ceramic artist and have been a social worker and school counselor.
Great, thank you so much. Eric?
Hi, I'm Eric Salazar. I'm a clarinetist and composer. I'm known as the Clarinet Guy. I'm also the Director of Community Engagement at Classical Music Indy, and I am sitting at home in Brownsburg, Indiana today.
Wow, great. Thank you, Eric, and welcome panel, and thank you. I want to go ahead and move on to the staff and have you just introduce your name, title, and role here today. Let's start with Brady.
Hi, I am Brady Eulis. I'm the Region 5 Arts Partner for the Indiana Arts Commission through the Community Foundation of Randolph County. I also grew up in Muncie and am coming to you from Indianapolis.
Wonderful. And Chapin?
Hey there, Chapin Schnick. I'm the Contracts Operations and IT Assistant at the Arts Commission, and I'm coming to you from our office today where I'm serving in a tech role, excuse me.
Great, thank you, Chapin. So I'm doing a dual role, both working on behalf of the Indiana Arts Commission and also facilitating this panel here today. So as I put on my IAC hat, I want to start this panel, just share a few words on behalf of the Commission. To first and foremost, thank you, panelists, for sharing your time and expertise. You've participated in specialized training to prepare for this work, which this year includes how to reduce implicit bias in the review process. And you've spent many hours reviewing these applications, lending your expertise to assure a high quality process. To all here and those listening in, I want to say a few words about why this year's panel process is different, as longtime panel observers will soon discover. We've been very clear from the beginning of this upcoming grant cycle in our guidelines, in the application, and in training that our focus would be on what's most important right now, and that is to responsibly support our arts organizations at this critical time. And for this grant cycle, that means supporting organizations that demonstrate they are operating and will continue to operate during the FY22 grant period. As a result of these changes, you may hear very little dialogue and feedback. That in no way reflects a lack of dedication to a thorough evaluation process. It merely is a reflection of this unique time and unique process. Again, thank you for all you do for the arts in Indiana. And now I want to go ahead and begin the panel process with my facilitator hat on. And this is how it will work. The panel will first review the application pool for operating support, and then for merit consideration. And to be clear, each of those has a very distinct process. For both processes, if a panelist had a conflict, that panelist would go to the waiting room. However, I do believe we do not have a conflict on this panel. But let me first go over the review process for operating or organization support. In this process, panelists will be coming to consensus. They will use a summary sheet that has the results of the individual pre-panel assessment, which were based upon the organizational resiliency assessment. The panel will come to consensus for each application to make one of the following recommendations to the Indiana Arts Commission. And that is, yes, recommend for funding the application as is. No, do not recommend funding the application. Or yes, recommend the funding the application with required modifications. Now, the required modifications will be determined by the panel. And that means IAC and our partners will follow up with the applicants after the panel to collect the information to ensure panelists' concerns are addressed. Once a decision has been made for each application, the staff will record the decision. Once the review for organization support is complete, we'll move to the merit process. And if needed, we may take a break. For the merit process review, all applicants that elected to submit for merit consideration were assigned a reader. And today the panel will use that reader process to discuss applications. But because of the competitiveness of the merit program this year, those applications whose average score ranked in the top 10 from the pre-assessment will be discussed today. The reader will provide their assessment of the application based upon the evaluation criteria. And also, I'd like the panel to review that list in alphabetical order. Panelists, please note there is no need to recap what was submitted since everyone has read it. You just have to provide your comments. And then after that reader is done providing their comments, I'll open it up to the rest of the panel should they have any additional viewpoints. And once that occurs, panelists will be asked to update their scores and queue up the next application, as it's very common for scores to change as a result of that broader discussion. So we are ready to get started. Unless anybody has a question, I'm going to do a quick scan. It looks like everybody is good to go, or certainly Chapin will let me know if I miss anything. So let's go ahead and begin. Now, what I want you to do is to look at the, oh, by the way, folks on YouTube, if you want to access the list of applications, you can look in the description on YouTube. For the rest of this discussion, our panelists will just be referring to their spreadsheet. So take a mute. I'd first like for you to draw your attention to your resiliency assessment summary sheet. That's the Excel sheet I just referred to. And we're first going to go look at the batch where you all are in consensus to recommend to the commission for funding as is. So take a moment to look at the applications in green on your spreadsheet and let me know if you have any concerns about those applications. If you do not have a concern, that I will ask the panel to come to consensus to go ahead and recommend those applications for funding. Is everybody in agreement to go ahead and recommend the applications in green for funding? Just do it like a thumbs up or yeah, okay. Eric, everybody's in agreement? Okay, great. So staff take note that the following applications were recommended for funding by consensus from our panel, and that includes Arts Place, Masterworks Chorale, Muncie Arts and Cultural Council, and Richmond Symphony Orchestra. So the next sort of phase of this process, we're going to go individually by each application. And the first one we're going to look at is Anderson Fine Arts Foundation, DBA, Anderson Museum of Art. So this is where you almost came to complete consensus, but one of you felt it would be helpful to have a yes with modifications. So for those of you who have concern about this application and may want to require modification, can you please share what that might be? Or would you like to go ahead and recommend the organization for funding as is? And again, go ahead.
I'll review funding as is.
Okay. Other panelists?
Same.
Lydia?
Sorry, I was trying to look at my spreadsheets and portal, but yes, same.
And Eric?
Yep, recommend.
Good. All right, excellent. Brady, take note that the panel is recommending Anderson Fine Arts Foundation for funding. The next application we're going to look at, and excuse me for a moment, I'm going to close down my email so it doesn't distract me. It's very easy to do. We are going to look at Anderson Symphony Orchestra Association. Again, here, most of you recommend for funding, but we do have a yes with. So I want to provide the opportunity to have a discussion to raise concerns. Now, I do want to be clear about a yes with. It just merely means that we are going to go through the due diligence of getting the information to confirm it's good to move forward. So I just want to clarify that. Concerns?
Yeah, so I feel pretty good about recommending, but I noticed $140,000 difference in their budget versus their projections for 2021. And I know they mentioned an endowment and a reserve fund, so I feel comfortable. I just wanted a little bit more clarity on what that looks like in terms of organization survival.
Okay. Other panelists echo the same concern?
Yes.
Okay. So would you recommend that we follow up to get clarity on the discrepancy in the projected budget and to provide explanation to ensure financial sustainability?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. Can you send me the merit speakers? Okay, great. Brady, you got that? All right. So the panel is in consensus with that recommendation, which has been noted and recorded as well. So fantastic. Way to go. You guys are already finding your groove. Excellent. Okay, so the next application we're going to look at is Anderson. Oh, let me make sure I got this. Anderson Young Ballet Theatre, Inc. And here we have kind of a sort of a split of different sort of concerns. Does anybody want to start with sharing some of the concerns that they have with this application? Perhaps a modification that you may want to see to help move it forward.
At least from what I could see, the financial information was from 2018 and 2019. So I don't feel like I have a present picture of where the organization is at. That's my concern. And that may have been an error in uploading or not. I'm not sure.
So you would want to, go ahead.
Oh yeah, I was just agreeing that was one of my comments, and I had ticked that box on our evaluation rubric that I did not see the current financial documentation, we need the fiscal year 20 budget and actual and the 21 budget projections and a balance sheet for the close of the last fiscal year.
Okay. Other modifications you would like to see or requested materials to feel comfortable with moving this application forward?
Yes, I was a bit concerned about the fundraising methods and the mention that their traditional primary means of fundraising wasn't really happening or wasn't possible right now. So I was concerned that fundraising may not be meeting the organization's needs. And I wondered if other methods were in development, if the board and parents had discussed other revenue streams, grants, or sponsorship.
Okay. So that sounds to me like a plan for financial sustainability. Is that an accurate assessment? Mm-hmm. Okay. So it sounds like you would request correct and updated financial materials, current balance sheet, as well as a plan for financial sustainability, particularly through the next fiscal year. Okay. Anything else? Go ahead.
I had also marked on our rubric more information about communication frequency and depth. I just didn't have a clear picture of their newsletter distribution, the frequency, or they mentioned social media, the post frequency. I wasn't sure, as our rubric says, about the frequency and depth of communication.
Okay. Other panelists agree? You see that similarly?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't have anything to add, but everything Lydia just said is a concern of mine as well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So current and anticipated community engagement activity, particularly around programming. Okay. Did you get all that as well, Brady? Okay. Now with all of that and addressing these concerns, then you would feel comfortable moving it forward for funding?
If the organization is able to, yes.
Okay. I sense some serious reservations here. Are you concerned with actually moving it forward for funding? Because you can say no.
I had difficulty making an assessment because I didn't feel that I had enough information or the up-to-date financial information. So it was just not being familiar and only having the information available to me through the application and their web links. I just couldn't really assess.
Okay.
Yeah, that's how I feel. So since I couldn't assess, I would say no, but it could have been a simple matter of uploading. There was a problem with uploading documents, and if I had more information, I'd be willing to say yes.
Okay.
So I recommend funding as long as staff is comfortable with the continuity of financial information and the programming information.
Okay, continuity of financial and programming. Great. Well, we'll go ahead and move it forward for funding with the required modifications addressed by the applicant. Great, excellent. Thank you, panel. And that would be for Anderson Young Ballet Theatre. The next application that we're going to discuss is the Art Association of Randolph County. And for the most part, it looks like you guys are all in agreement to move it forward, but there is some concern. Anybody want to bring up the concern or share a modification that you would like to see before moving it forward for funding?
Yes, I simply noticed that there was a negative $2,000 deficit in their budget, and I just want to know if that's a strategic thing, like a plan, a calculated loss, or not.
Other concerns or agree?
Agreed.
What would you suggest that we get, like how they plan to address the shortfall?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. Everybody in agreement? Leanne, Lydia? Okay, cool. All right. The Art Association of Randolph County is by consensus recommended for funding with modifications as noted by the panel. Brady, you have those modifications? Okay, excellent. And the next application is Cornerstone Center for the Arts. And again, we have kind of a split vote here. Who would like to share some modifications that they would like to see, or some of the concerns that they saw that they feel like needs to be addressed?
This was another one where unless I read it wrong or didn't get all the documents, I did not see a 2021 budget and projection. I feel by the way that the organization has written about their what they're doing to ensure survival, they've provided like really clear figures. So I feel comfortable saying yes with, as long as we're able to receive a 2021 budget and a projection for it.
Okay. Others in agreement or see something differently?
Yeah, that was my feedback for the financial portion, that I didn't see the fiscal year 21 budget and projections. I also noted that there was a staff decrease, and I wondered how that had limited course offerings. So I wondered if we could have more information about their plans to recruit staff. I did note an Instagram post about hiring staff. And just some of the nature of the narrative, I wondered how current staff are managing and how the organization was supporting current staff. It sounds like they've, taken on a lot with a lot of work with the decrease in staffing. And then on this application, again, I tick the box for more information on communication frequency and how feedback was solicited and assessed.
Do others agree? Eric's nodding yes. So in addition to the current budget and projections, also provide information about staffing and capacity, and then a current demonstration of community engagement. Okay, as well as future or just current?
I just didn't feel I had enough information about communication frequency overall and how feedback was solicited and assessed and how that impacted their program planning. So, what they've done that in past or what their, current methodology is would, be helpful.
Great. Brady?
Yeah, I just want to add for context that I have already been in conversation with Cornerstone about their missing financials. They let me know that because of some leadership changes, there was a postponed board meeting. So that's already in the works, just so that you guys are comforted by that. And so Cornerstone knows, if they're watching, that that's on my radar as well.
Okay. Cassie?
No, it's good. I know you guys got your fingers on it.
Great. Okay. So really more of an explanation of frequency of community engagement, as well as the financials and staff capacity, including recruitment. Great. Everybody good to move it forward with that? All that modification? Okay, cool. So that moves Cornerstone Center for the Arts forward with modification as noted by the panel. The next application to discuss is Hoosier Shakes. And for the most part, it looks like we were in consensus. However, we do have one concern. So if anybody would like to share their concerns, that would be fabulous.
Yeah, so for me, it's the depth of communication and how that communication is shaping the programming. I appreciate the anecdote about community members thinking they were a milkshake company instead of a theater company. I appreciate that vulnerability quite a bit, actually. But I would like to learn more about how they're communicating with their audiences and how that's shaping their programming.
Do others see that similarly or disagree?
I just think during times of COVID, it's a lot to ask. This whole thing's being run by a bunch of volunteers. That's amazing.
One thing that I had noted, and I know, social media is not the only method of communication, but they did undergo rebranding, which I thought was pretty impressive for this, small and new organization. So they are perhaps, pivoting and thinking strategically in how to address misunderstandings about their project and mission. So when I looked at their social media, they had almost daily posts for April and were consistently using the branding and communication. So I guess I was heartened by that. They're new. Sorry, I'm toggling back to my other page. They were founded in 2014. Yes, okay, I'm on the right page. Sorry, I have so many windows open.
Fine, girl, no worries.
So they were founded in 2014, and the fact that they've recognized those communication challenges and have worked to address them and are being so consistent in their social media presence, I was heartened by that.
Would you like to move consensus to move the application forward as is?
Yeah, I think I'm convinced
You'd be
after
good with that.
the
All right.
conversation. Yeah, thank you.
It's a team effort. It really
Right.
is. So
Yeah.
thank you. All right. Well, we'll go ahead. Everybody feel comfortable moving that forward? Thumbs up, every nod. Okay. Okay. Cool. Great. Well, then we move Hoosier Shakes forward as a consensus yes. Recommend for funding. The next application to discuss is the Marion Community School of the Arts. Anybody want to share the concern that they had with this application? Hearing none, would you like to recommend the application Marion Community School of the Arts for funding as is? If yes, go ahead and put a thumbs up so I can see, or nod your head, or excellent. Okay, Leanne, are you in agreement as well? I didn't see. Okay, all right, great. Marion Community School of the Arts is recommended for funding as is. The next application for discussion is Marion Philharmonic Association. And panel, if you could share your concerns, if you have any, on that application, that would be great. Eric?
Yeah, so for me, I'm putting on my artist hat here. In the organizational survival, it seems like the strategy is to reduce, at least how I'm reading it, is to reduce the number of artists involved. So I totally understand and advocate for safety measures during the pandemic. So I get that we can't have the full orchestra on stage with a full audience. But the way it's reading is my concern is that it might be, let's just cut 30 musicians out of every performance. And my concern is that that's the strategy rather than seeking other ways of engaging the musicians, for example, having them record as a soloist. So I would just want, I'm cool with saying yes with, I just want some clarity on how they plan to continue working with musicians.
And I was a little concerned that they didn't have a written pandemic plan. And that if I read the budget properly, they said they actually budgeted to lose money this year. Just want to make sure they're financially stable.
Okay.
I would agree with, I had checked the box for, we need more information about organizational survival. So I was interested in more information about planning for general operations and financial sustainability. Is the board, again, like what Casey said, is the board developing a plan for pandemic operations? And then in the financial document review, did I, to my more experienced panelists, did I interpret it correctly? Was there a balance sheet for the most recently completed fiscal year? Because I thought the sheet said it is of February 2021. I'm looking at the other information, but please let me know here if I misinterpreted that.
That's correct. Yeah, it does say from as of February 2021. So I'm unsure if that meets the required financial information.
If it may reflect their actual fiscal year, it doesn't have to reflect our fiscal year for our program. Yeah, I know. There's all these little nuances, so they're fine.
Yeah, they might not be operating on a calendar year, Lydia.
Correct. Yeah, there's
their fiscal year start date that they entered was July 1st, 2019, and the fiscal year end date was June 30th. So I think they were operating on. So wouldn't the most recently completed fiscal year be fiscal year 20?
Yeah, so it would be. Let me ask you this: would the corrected balance sheet impact your decision about moving forward with this organization? It sounds like the yes with is revolving around financial long-term sustainability. Okay, yes. So we can request that and see a comparative between the most recently completed fiscal year to their most recent balance sheet, but the most recent balance sheet might be a better indicator of the financial stability of the organization. But we'll go ahead and ask for both, or the corrected document, as well as a financial sustainability plan and how they will continue to work with artists. Now, while I don't think artists and working with artists is quite along the sustainability part, I'm happy to collect that information, as I don't think it really is completely germane to the stability of the organization, other than more of the understandably biased concern as an artist that the organization continue to work with artists and meet its mission, which is perfectly understandable. So everybody in agreement to move that forward with modifications as noted by the panel? Okay, great job. Excellent. And that was Marion Philharmonic Association. And now we are moving on to Minnetrista. And who would like to share any potential modifications they would like to see for this organization's application? And take your time. I know it takes a while to kind of toggle around and pulling up an application in the online system and move a screen around on Zoom and then read what you had to say. So for those live watching, yeah, there's a lot of like negotiating in the background here for the panelists. So Lydia?
I checked the box for more information on strategies for engaging the community, and I wrote no major concerns, but I wanted more context to better understand the impact of programming types, digital versus in-person, and the motivation and strategy to increase digital content. Because I wondered if survey response from members and attendees had supported ongoing creation and expansion of digital content, and how the impact of digital content compared with the in-person programs or exhibition in terms of attendance or engagements online. And let me jump ahead. Yeah, so I was curious to better understand the motivation to invest in digital capabilities and what that meant in terms of staffing and funding, since the desired outcome of staff restructuring was to streamline functions. So that just trying to kind of bridge the gap between, you know, what was written about staff restructuring and streamlining functions and some of the programming that they were doing.
Other thoughts to what Lydia's saying? Do you agree? See it differently? Yeah, Cassie?
Good observation, yeah.
And this is all, you know, from the perspective that in-person programming is a lot of staff time and labor, and digital content is as well. So when I see staff restructuring, I want to understand more about how staff are creating those different programming types and how they're being budgeted and supported, and how community input influenced that.
Okay, so what would you like us to collect then to see if I'm getting this straight? So staff capacity as it reflects the change from in-person to online, and how that is, as well as how they're engaging with their community. Is there anything that dovetails financially for that? Do we need to, and how that impacts their financial sustainability? No.
Just how those initiatives are being budgeted and staffed, and how the community feedback or input, you know, influence those directions.
Okay. Do you got that, Brady? Everybody in agreement with that those modification recommendations? Everybody? Okay. We'll go ahead and move forward with Minnetrista with the recommendations for modifications as noted by the panel. Brady has noted those concerns. We will go ahead and move forward to Muncie Civic and College Symphony Association. Well, for the most part, it looks like you guys are in agreement to move forward with this applicant for funding. There's some concern. Anybody want to share their concern? Feel that that should have a modification in order to move it forward with funding.
I just noted there was quite a bit of turnover, employee turnover. So they've corrected whatever that was going on.
Okay.
Yeah, I also noted that, and I give me a second here. Yeah, I noted the staff turnover during the pandemic, which could just be like, maybe they're like, cool, my time, it's my time, I'm ready. Or maybe it's so I also wanted to know more about infrastructure is being put in place for future success. I like all the things that are noted. A strong pro bono agreement with a top flight marketing agency, a new office and admin tools, aggressive vision to become more regional in impact. I just want a bit more detail on what that infrastructure is going to be. So I want a bit more specific information on how, how are they going to use the marketing agency? A new office sounds cool, and admin tools are all useful. I just want to know why they're needed and how they're going to be used.
Okay. Others in agreement with that? Sort of, kind of?
Sort of, kind of.
It's okay if not.
I know it's hard in Indiana. We're kind of like, you know, such pleasers, and like, let's all get along. You know I'm critical of that. It's okay not to agree. It's okay to see differently. Metaferic feels really passionate about it too. We can certainly require a modification. What are other thoughts?
Neutral.
Lydia?
I'm fine with, am I on? Okay, I'm fine with asking for more information as Eric outlined.
Okay. Leanne? Yep. Okay. So I'm not sure I quite understand what you're looking for, but Brady seems to understand what you're looking for. No?
No, I was responding to a question from Lydia, and so I was a little in and out with you, Eric. If you could re-summarize that, I would really appreciate it.
Yeah, so I noted the staff turnover, and then there's talk of infrastructure being put in place. And I would like to know if that is as a result of staff turnover, or was it going to be put in place before the staff turnover? And I like all the things that are being said about the infrastructure in terms of getting help from a marketing agency, a new office and admin tools, and an aggressive vision to have a more regional impact. I just want to know, like, what is that vision? Who is that marketing agency? How are they going to be helpful? I don't know if we have a box for that, though.
Oh, you don't have to have a box for it. I think the key concern is that, does this affect sort of how you view the organization's or resiliency? You know, is this something that you need addressed in order to ensure that the organization will be continuing to operate? It could be that if that's the case, then we just need to understand specifically what we can get from the organizations to ensure that you feel comfortable that the organization will be operating during FY22. And when it comes to staff turnover, it could be you simply want to have the organization address what happened with for the staff turnover to occur, and how they're moving forward to advance the art form within their organization potentially. I'm creating words in your mouth, but I'm just trying to kind of get to the heart of it.
No, I think that is my concern, is the it's mainly having to do with the staff turnover. Is that a red flag that means that the infrastructure isn't as stable as it seems? Or,
gotcha.
Yeah, so yes.
So addressing staff turnover and its relationship to organizational stability.
Yes, yep.
Excellent. Lydia, did you have something to add?
I got a little mixed up and I wasn't on the right page, but just to reconfirm, we're on Muncie Civic and College Symphony Association.
You got it, girl.
I saw Brady nodding. I'm so sorry.
Don't be.
So yeah, I think I'm in agreement with Eric and asking for more information. But I was impressed that a new full-time executive director could be hired and that a strategic plan was being developed. I see those as, positive, with considering the amount of staff turnover. And I was glad that they were upfront about identifying the loss of subscribers, because that's a first step in strategically, planning for the next phase in developing new audiences. And I didn't tick any boxes to ask for more information, but I just wanted to raise that it seemed like they were working to course correct, and the development of the leadership team and their initiatives sounded promising.
Okay. So other thoughts?
No, I'm impressed that they've hired a new executive director of strategic plan. I just want to make sure that they've corrected the structure, if there's any structural problems with employee culture. So
excellent. Okay, great. All right, well, we'll go ahead and move forward. Yes, with modifications for Muncie Civic and College Symphony Association to address staff turnover and how it impacts the stability of the organization, including culture. So excellent. Thank you for getting to the heart of that. That's really helpful. It's not always clear. So that's why we have a whole panel. Yay. So you guys are doing great. The next application is Muncie Civic Theater Association. Does anybody want to share any concerns or potential yes with modifications that they would like to bring to the table?
I had just, checked the box for needing more information about the frequency of communication. Can they provide an estimate of newsletter distribution frequency, social media posts, just to give us a better sense about how they're engaging and getting feedback from the community.
Okay. Others in agreement? Sort of, kind of, maybe? Okay. Leanne, thoughts? Yes, no? Yeah, you would also like to get information about the frequency of communication with the community.
Yes.
Okay, Eric. So it looks like we have general consensus. We'll go ahead and move it forward with the provide information about the frequency of communication with the community and to ensure ongoing operations. And that would be for the Muncie Civic Theater Association. The next application for consideration is the Richmond Art Museum. Shift thoughts?
It's pretty strong.
Strong application. Would you like to go ahead and move that application forward as a recommended for funding?
I would.
Leanne's in agreement, Eric's in agreement. Lydia?
Yes, I'm in agreement.
Okay, great job, team. All right, we'll go ahead and move forward with the Richmond Art Museum as a consensus, yes, recommend for funding. And then the next application is the Richmond Civic Theater. What are the concerns with this application? Or any recommendations for modifications, or simply thoughts on maybe just moving it forward? Comments?
Unless I'm really misreading it, it looks like their operations are still suspended. And one of our requirements is that they're continuing with limited interruption to recommend funding.
Other panelists see that similarly?
I need to go back and toggle back and forth.
Take your time.
I couldn't hear all of Eric's comments.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I noticed in our portal where it says suspended operations, they note that their operations are still suspended since December 23rd, 2020.
I agree that's a concern. I think a lot of organizations are finding ways to still provide activities, events, et cetera, but do it safely.
I would agree with that. And I also, in the financial document review, I didn't see the balance sheet. Did anybody else?
Same. I noticed that as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
And in the fiscal year 20 P&L, I wondered what it meant when a show title had deleted in parentheses next to it. I had a bit of trouble interpreting that.
Are you Is there something that you would recommend that the commission follow up with the applicant to get to as a modification?
Well, the balance sheet and then just clarification on the fiscal year 20 payments and loss. The individual line items that have deleted next to them in parenthesis was confusing to me.
Okay. Okay. And to, I mean, it sounds like they need to fundamentally address if they are actually operating and
Yes.
certainly will continue to operate.
Yes.
Let's gauge the level of reservation. Is the panel looking to not recommend the applicant for funding, or would that be sufficient information to request to ensure moving it forward? Leanne?
I think I would agree to move it forward if we had more information about, I mean, what plans do they have to reopen? You know, do they have things lined up for May and June, or do they not have a plan?
Okay.
I have a question. It's a logistical one. When are these applications submitted? I just need a refresher on that.
Oh, yeah. How did we even, that's a lot of detail in all of this process. So I believe that the applications, quite honestly, I'm not sure I remember exact date either. I think it was March 5th.
Okay, so current might mean, I was initially going to say, no, I do not recommend, but taking within the context of this may have been submitted in early March.
Application. I will add that applications can also be submitted prior to the deadline. So that was the deadline for submission. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm willing to say yes with if we can get their reopening plan.
Okay, reopening plan, balance sheet, clarification on deleted line items, and plans for reopening.
I had also checked the box for more information on their communication frequency. They said they distributed a survey, so I wanted to know, what was the distribution and response rate, if possible, and the approximate town hall attendance for they mentioned a town hall style Zoom meetings, and how many did they have? What was the approximate attendance? Just to get a sense of their interaction with the community, the frequency and the depth.
Okay. Is everybody in agreement with that as well? That you want to get the communication? Okay. All right, we'll go ahead and collect that information. We'll look at that as a yes with recommend for funding with the information collected and addressed for the applicant, which is Richmond Civic Theater. We'll go ahead and move on to the next application, and that is the Quilters Hall of Fame. And after Quilters, we have 2 more applications, and we'll go ahead and take a break at that time. But let's look at Quilters Hall of Fame. Does anybody have any concerns about this application, or would you like to go ahead and recommend it for funding as is? And Cassie's probably like, let me just navigate to where that application is. I know it's clunky. It's okay. It's just not a race. Plus, I get to look at Eric's beautiful cat. So
I checked for the box for more information about the organizational survival. I wondered if they could share more about planning for organizational operations, funding and governance, and how the pandemic had altered existing plans. They noted a staffing decrease, so I wanted more information for that and how it had impacted operations. While they were, they had decreased staffing, but they were increasing. They noted plans to increase or had already increased virtual content. And then I also didn't see the balance sheet for the most recently completed fiscal year 2020. The sheet was March 2021, which, you know, we had that discussion earlier. If everybody else is, you know, fine with that, or I don't know, that I just marked it because that was what the required upload was, the fiscal balance sheet as of the last fiscal year.
Okay. Is it the rest of the panel in agreement? Do you feel like we need to get the modifications in order to recommend for funding, or other thoughts?
I didn't notice the balance sheet, so thanks for bringing that up. I do think, even though it sort of feels like a red tape kind of thing, I think it's worth it to get that fiscal year 2020 balance sheet.
Okay. So definitely want to get a balance sheet. Lydia, give me a little bit more clarity on what exactly you're looking for. I mean, the organizations had to switch gears in a pandemic, but what specifically, again, are you looking to get? I want to make sure I get that correctly in order to move it forward as a modification.
On our rubric, I had ticked more information on how the organization is ensuring survival, because in that field in the application, I just didn't really have a sense of how they're planning for organizational operations, funding and governance, and whether or not the pandemic had altered those plans.
Gotcha.
I guess I just didn't have enough information and context for that.
But specifically around the ensuring of organizational survival. So you really wanted to get more depth and breadth to that. Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Okay, excellent. That makes a lot more sense. All right. Everybody in agreement? And move it forward with recommendations for funding?
Sure.
Yep. Okay, great. So the Quilters Hall of Fame has moved forward as recommended for funding with the following modifications: a balance sheet from the most recently completed fiscal year, and plan for organizational survival. The next application is Whitewater Valley Arts Association. And who would like to share their concerns, or if you would like to require any modifications, or if you would just like to go ahead and move it forward if you're like, I think they're doing good.
I'm okay to move this one forward.
Lan and Cassie are in agreement to move it forward as is. Lydia?
I was curious if they could provide more information about communication frequency and strategy and depth. I noticed the website mentioned a member newsletter, and it seemed to have decreased in frequency over the years. And in their application, it wasn't clear to me if it was still actively published more than once a year. And they mentioned something called shout outs, and I didn't know if that was the newsletter or how that differed. It was something, just a communication distributed to members, I believe. So just more information about communication frequency. And they mentioned a collaboration with 4-H, and I wondered if under the area of organization survival, if they were, if the board could share if they had more, plans for developing this partnership, or finding additional opportunities to grow memberships and the audiences.
Do others agree? Other share concern. Well, I think Cassie's good with it as is. Eric, what do you think?
I had a financial concern, which may be unwarranted, so keep me in check.
Okay.
But I noticed that The organization relies on the auction, and the 2021 actual, the auction as a way to generate revenue, the auction dipped significantly, and the projection for 2021 is not planning for any kind of dip in that revenue. So I don't know if it's I don't know if it's enough to say a yes with, because can we predict any kind of like budgets are what? But I did observe that despite a challenge in 2021, they're still relying on the auction as a significant portion of their revenue.
Lydia, go ahead.
Yeah, I would be interested in more information. You know, Eric is, has more experience and context for evaluating the budgets. One note that I had is, is it possible to have a more detailed breakdown of assets and liabilities? The balance sheet was not as detailed as I had anticipated.
Cassie, counter sort of thoughts on that? You feel good about recommending for funding, and what do you?
Yeah, again, I trust the staff is looking at these financials pretty closely, and that you work with them on a daily basis. So I didn't pull that financial back up again, so I don't have that specific detail.
Okay. Leanne, anything to add?
I would agree with getting that additional information.
Okay. All right, so just clarity on the frequency of communication with community, and clarity on how the organization will address a potential budget shortfall if projected income does not manifest. Okay, is that accurate? Everybody in agreement to move forward with modification? Yep.
Yes.
Okay, great. We'll move forward with Whitewater Valley Arts Association with stated modifications. Our last application for this particular section of our review, which again is for organization support prior to moving forward with merit. And the application is Youth Symphony Orchestra of East Central Indiana. So panel, if you would share any thoughts or concerns, or if you want to recommend it for funding.
So in the organizational survival, I love how thorough they are in describing their execution of safety protocols. It does not contain any financial information about sustainability. So I would like some info on that.
Noted. Other panelists?
I would agree with Eric's request, and then I also had checked the box for more information about communication method. How the emails and newsletters were distributed, to existing contacts, outreach via partners, how the wider community audience was reached, educational institutions. And then I was a bit, I would like more information about the percentages used in the application. What was the overall number of student participants and figures for those percentages? Because in the application, they had something like, 60% of students from last year returned. Well, I don't know what that percentage represents. So that would be helpful. And a decrease in staffing level was noted. So I wondered if there were plans to increase this, if this would change when student participation or enrollment continues to increase, because they had noted, from when they first resumed rehearsals, I think it was, I'm looking, 60% of students had returned, and it went up to something like 83% by this summer. So I just wondered about, plans to increase staffing.
Other thoughts? So it sounds like what Lydia and Eric are suggesting is more information about, or to provide information about financial sustainability and to be inclusive of how that reflects operating and staff capacity, as well as engagement with community.
Mhm.
Does that sound like a fair assessment? Is the whole panel in agreement to move forward with the requested modification? All right. Great job, team. Youth Symphony Orchestra of East Central Indiana has been recommended funding with the noted requirements or required modifications. We will go ahead and take a quick 5-minute break and then reconvene to review the merit section. And Eric is in radical agreement with that. So let's go ahead and come back at around, we'll do a little extra time, 10:45. Thanks all. We'll see you back at 10:45. Thank you. Okay, we will get started here in a little bit. Wait for our panel to come back online. I can hear Cassie, but I don't see her, so I know she's around somewhere.
You can't see me?
No, but I can hear you. I can see you.
Weird. Oh, how my video turned up. I'm here. Here we go. Sorry about that.
Oh, no worries. Yeah. All right, we'll just wait for Leanne. And for this, Brady had put in the chat box the order, so I'll go ahead and use the order that she put in the chat box. That sounds good. It should be in alphabetical order. All right. Leanne, are you ready to join us?
She might take her puppy for a break.
They need frequent breaks, that's for sure. I could never handle a puppy. I could barely handle a cat, you know? All right, well, let's go ahead and get back to it. And we're going to move forward to the Merit Award consideration. As a reminder, this is a very different process from what the panel just provided for organization support. In this process, panelists will provide their assessment of the application's Merit Award submission and update their scores as a result of the discussion. So as I stated a little bit ago, we'll go ahead and use the order that's in the chat box. And the applications that we'll be reviewing are the top scoring 10 from that was submitted, since it will be a very competitive process. And the first application that will be reviewed is Anderson Fine Arts Foundation, which is also known as the Anderson Museum of Art. And the reader for that application is Lydia. And Lydia, take your time to queue up the application. Just let us know when you're ready to start by chatting away.
Sorry, it's getting scrolling within the scrolling on the portal seems to be a challenge for me. Okay, Anderson Fine Arts Foundation, the Merit Award consideration. Just a second.
Oh, okay, good. I wasn't sure if you're frozen for that. I was like, well, she's
Yes, no,
really good
I'm
at not
just
moving.
I wanted, overall I had on the Likert scale, had high scores for commitment or innovation for the arts experience. And
Hey, Lydia, I'm just going to interrupt you real fast, and I apologize that I didn't go over this reminder and before the panel. Avoid stating anything about scoring. It's all averaged with the other panelists, so it could provide like a false expectation. So just, sort of the strengths and weaknesses overall would be great. Thank you so much.
Thanks for your reminder. Okay, I was gathering my bearings with the form and the scrolling, and I thought the Mounds State Park collaboration was unique and intriguing, along with the artistic story walk. And I thought that they had potential to reach untapped audiences. I wondered if they could share more information on how community input was gathered and incorporated into planning and programming, and how they could gauge that the art kit success. They mentioned that it was a well-received program. So, I would be curious to understand how they gauged that.
Great. Anything else? Good to go. Other comments from the panel? Any new, different, or even opposing comments?
The only thing I have to add is that I wanted more information on how underserved communities are served. I see lots of information about community members. I just need to know a little bit more about them.
Agreed.
Other comments?
I agree with that.
Okay, excellent. Leah?
I do as well.
Okay. Well, go ahead and update your scores and queue up the next application, which is for arts plays. And just a reminder, you don't have to be in consensus. I think it's awesome that you are, but it is okay to have differing viewpoints. But go ahead and update your scores, and then we'll move forward in just a little bit. Okay, we're going to go ahead and discuss Arts Place, Inc. And our reader for this particular merit application is Leanne.
Overall, I felt this was a really strong application. They are very focused on getting input from their community, from all their stakeholders, I guess is the word I'm looking for. And it was one of the few that really specifically addressed the underserved population. Like that is, seemed to me like it was right in the forefront of their planning. I'm looking again at what more details here. Being a rural organization also where it's hard for people to drive long distances, unlike when you're in the city. And it looks like they really put forth an effort to make sure that people have access to their programs.
Great. Thank you, Leanne. Other thoughts? Other input from the panel? Okay. Lydia?
No? I was just going to say, I thought they had a impressive list of actions in response to their community input, and they used multiple methods to collect that. So I felt that they had, responded appropriately based on feedback at many levels.
Great. Thank you. Let's go ahead. Any other comments? All right, we'll go ahead and update your scores and queue up the next application, which is Hoosier Shakes. And our reader for Hoosier Shakes is also Leanne. And Leanne, take your time to get this queued up if you need to. Leanne, are you ready? It's muted, just in case you are.
I was looking for my notes and couldn't find them. So let me look at the actual application and it'll come back to me.
Okay.
Okay, again, they had a strong emphasis on input from their community. Oh, yes. One thing that I thought was really cool was they presented Othello to diverse audiences in downtown Marion. And then that was used to lead conversations about racial reconciliation. And I thought the way they managed to do that was really awesome and could be an example for other organizations. It's like they've also other businesses, theaters, churches have opened their venues to make performances more accessible. Okay, those are my main comments.
Great, thank you. Other comments on the Merit Award application for Hoosier Shakes?
Like Leanne, I was impressed with the Othello performance and discussion, but I believe the applicant noted that it was pre-pandemic. And for the Merit Award, I would have liked to have read or had clarity about more pandemic specific examples. But I did note, I appreciated their flexibility and coordination with local officials to hold the Christmas and the March shows. And then following that, the executive director's efforts to share that knowledge and protocols with others in the field. So it was a great example of collegiality. But what was missing, I would have liked to have read more about community input, how that was solicited and assessed and considered in their planning.
Thank you, Lydia. Other thoughts? Okay, we'll go ahead and update your scores and queue up the next application, which is for Marion Community School of the Arts. And I do want to note to those that are watching on YouTube that these are actually in order of alphabetical. Or I could just say alphabetical order, but you know, why would I do that? All right, well, let's go ahead and move on to Marion Community School of the Arts. And our reader for this application is Cassie.
Great. I was impressed with the variety and number of programs that they did and the outreach to their underserved communities, including the VA, the senior living facilities across the county. They collaborated with, again, a lot of different organizations, which truly impressed me, as well as the free courses. They switched things to free courses so that students had opportunities to participate. So it felt like they were really trying to be inclusive in all of their programming. So yeah, overall, I was highly impressed with all their efforts.
Great, thank you, Cassie. Other thoughts, comments?
I'd like to add to that. One of my favorite parts regarding the senior living facilities is that they provided DVDs. So rather than live streaming on YouTube, which may be a barrier for residents in those facilities, they met them where they were and provided something they were familiar with.
Great, thank you, Eric. Other comments?
I'd just like to second that observation. That stood out to me as well, Eric, that the organization is cognizant of meeting people in organizations where they are in terms of digital technology. So, sharing recordings via social media would reach some audiences, and then, for the senior living facilities and Veteran Affairs Administration, just taking into consideration what the staff may have available to them and what the residents may have available to them. Providing that content on DVDs is just very sensitive and aware. So I think that the organization demonstrated they're very purposeful in making the arts available to different audiences, and then also leveraging the existing capacity of organizations like United Way to reach underserved populations.
Great, thank you. Hearing no additional feedback, we'll go ahead and update your scores for Marion Community School of the Arts. And queue up the next application, which is Masterworks Chorale. For Masterworks Chorale, we also have the first reader as Cassie. So Cassie, whenever you're ready.
Sure. So I too was impressed with the way they buoyed through the pandemic and came up with some really creative ways to make sure that they were continuing to serve their constituents and to reach out to the audiences. I didn't see a huge amount of collaboration in their efforts, unless I missed something, as well as not really understanding if they were able to reach out to the underserved in any additional way. But they were active in making sure they continued their art form, which was impressive.
Other input? Hearing none, go ahead and update your scores and queue up the following application, which is Minnetrista. And for Minnetrista, our reader is Eric. So Eric, whenever you're ready.
Yep. So I think it's clear that the organization is continuing to pivot and deliver arts experiences. I appreciated the literal data about the people who attended the events. That's always really great that people include that. My point of critique is regarding underserved communities, and I want to say that I want to acknowledge that revamping the $5 membership program is commendable, and I really appreciate that. And I would just encourage the organization to continue to have conversations with people who may have a barrier for participating in the programming, and seeing, if any additional work can be done.
Great, thank you, Eric. Other thoughts, other comments?
Well,
Okay.
I thought,
Go ahead, Lydia.
yeah, I also just wanted to piggyback on what Eric said about their they assessed local survey data as well as LaPaca Cohen's culture track data, which is national. And I thought that was impressive and stood out. And then how they seem to be adapting existing programming to meet specific needs of their community related to COVID and the pandemic, like the reflection space just seemed, I don't know if that had already been planned, but it seemed very timely. I appreciate the integration of prompts from local health experts. And then the fact that they took the Fairy Sprites and Lights, a longstanding program, and used it to help address like mental and emotional needs of children, to kind of leverage what they were already doing and tailor it to what their communities are needing right now, while lowering the financial barrier. They made that program free for families. Just seems like they're very aware of community needs, and yeah, that's all. Trailing thoughts, my brain.
Well, it happens. We've been doing this for a while, but thank you, Lydia. Go ahead and update your scores and for Minnetrista, and queue up the next application, which is Muncie Arts and Cultural Council. And for the Muncie Arts and Culture Council, our reader is Leanne. And if at any time that the panel would like to take a little bit more time in between applications, just feel free to let me know. I'm happy to pause. In the meantime, Leanne, whenever you're ready, go ahead.
Okay. I felt like they were really creative with trying to find ways for people to be involved without it necessarily having to be online, recognizing that a lot of artists may not have those skills to generate online work or activities. They found a couple of cool ways of involving artists in projects. One was a drawing, a coloring book for children, that each page was commissioned by the organization to have a local artist do that page. I thought that was pretty creative. Another one was the collaboration with Mid-Indiana Trails, which developed artwork along a section of the public trails with input from the public about what they thought would make the trails a better experience, and really looking at the relationship between humans and nature. They made a point of saying that the artists were compensated for the participation in these things. As far as underserved populations, they talk about at the end, there was a lot of streamed content, and it was a film festival that had over 2,900 views with 28 different states and 29 countries. So that obviously reached a very broad audience. But I really couldn't pick up anything that told me how they might be really targeting the underserved population. So.
Thank you, Leanne. Other input?
No, good summary.
Great. Go ahead and update your scores if you need to, and we'll move forward to the Muncie Civic Theater Association, where our reader is Cassie. So whenever you're ready, Cassie.
Okay, great. So again, another strong effort in making sure they continue their art, even regardless of the pandemic. So that I was impressed with all of the events that they did hold. meeting indoors, outdoors again, whatever they did. And the youth theater productions where they actually were able, because of the video component, were able to extend their reach farther than normal, which I found to be impressive. However, again, I was uncertain too about additional collaborations. I didn't really see that reflected here, nor any additional emphasis on reaching the underserved.
Other comments from the panel?
I would add to that, I would have liked more information about how community input was gathered and incorporated into planning and programming. They mentioned something about the audience receptiveness, and I wondered if that was how that was gauged or if there was a survey.
Good point.
Other input? Okay, we'll go ahead and update your scores and queue up the next application, which is Richmond Art Museum. And our reader for Richmond Art Museum is Lydia. Whenever you're ready, Lydia.
I'm gonna take a minute to scroll all the way, make sure I'm in the right area. So I noted the Ram Van Gogh sounded like an engaging and needed program, and I thought, I believe, looking back at the narrative, I think that was a conversion from an in-person program, and they made it mobile. Is that right, fellow panelists? And so I thought 75% retention for that program during a pandemic year was impressive. The expansion or plans to continue developing 3D tours appeared to be guided by community and visitor feedback. But I wasn't, more information or evidence about the meeting the needs of underserved communities would have been helpful.
Great, thank you, Lydia. Other comments? Opposing viewpoints? Okay, we'll go ahead and update your scores and then queue up then what I believe is the last application, which is Richmond Civic Theater. And the reader for Richmond Civic Theater is Eric. So Eric, whenever you're ready. Unless the panel needs more time, and always let me know if you do. Otherwise, bye.
So for me, I really appreciate that there was a survey sent out after the initial closing, and that the audience of this organization indicated that they would like to engage with streamed performances, and so then the organization put on stream performances. So that's good when you listen to your audience. It's unclear to me, I just have 2 points of critique. It's unclear to me about any kind of community partners that may be collaborating with, and it's also unclear to me regarding how an underserved audience is being reached. I really appreciate the streaming. I think that's really important, but putting something out on the internet doesn't guarantee that an underserved audience is reached. So I just wanted a little more clarity on that.
Great, thank you, Eric. Other comments? Hearing none, go ahead and update your scores. And that was our last application for merit award review today, and thus concludes the Indiana Arts Commission Region 5 FY22 Arts Organization Support Advisory Review panel today. Applicants will be notified of the status of their grant following the June commission meeting. And if you have any questions, do not hesitate to reach out to Brady Eulis.